Good morning, it's Loren Lockman from the Tanglewood Wellness Center, and I've been asked this morning to address the issue of pathogens. Most of us grow up believing that we get sick because we've been exposed to some bug, a bacteria, a virus, something else. This is what causes disease, and we spoke about what causes disease just a few days ago, but we didn't really get into this piece of it. So let's get this cleared up today. Pathogens do not cause disease, okay? And I have an analogy I've probably shared before on video, so some of you may have seen this before, but the best way I think to think about this, I'll tell you a little story. When I first opened Tanglewood 19 years ago, we were located on Tanglewood Drive in Maryland, and we were located, it was a big house, in a neighborhood of big houses just outside of Washington, D.C. And most of my neighbors, twice a week, they would put anywhere from 4 to 6 big garbage cans at the end of their driveway. And there'd be a garbage truck that would come down the street, stop in front of everyone's house, and dump all the garbage cans. Well, we didn't buy a lot of stuff, just like now. Most of the produce came home in canvas bags or boxes. There wasn't a lot of packaging. So roughly twice a month, I had about half a trash can full of stuff to put at the end of the driveway. And what I noticed was that on the 5 or 6 times a month that the garbage truck came down the road and I didn't have a trash can sitting at the end of the driveway, the garbage truck didn't stop at my house. Isn't that amazing? Okay. So what did this tell me? What does this prove? It proves that garbage men don't create garbage. Garbage attracts garbage men. Okay, you with me so far? Garbage attracts garbage men. Now, bacteria are nature's garbage men. We have a symbiotic relationship with bacteria, which means we do something for them and they do something for us. It's a mutual beneficial relationship, mutually beneficial relationship. What do we do for bacteria? We give them a place to live. We give them food, okay? They get room and board. What do they do in exchange for room and board? They clean out the garbage. Their job is to consume dead and dying tissue. Now, when they consume dead and dying tissue, what happens? What do you experience while they're consuming dead and dying tissue? Symptoms, okay? It doesn't feel so good. So if we can eliminate the bacteria, we feel better because they're not doing what they're doing. We don't have symptoms. But are we better off if they don't eliminate the garbage? What do you think? If they don't eliminate the garbage, it builds up in the body. Okay? This is a problem I hope everyone can see. All right? If the cells aren't capable of eliminating all the cellular waste, we've got a serious problem, and we depend on bacteria to do this. So, you might think, oh, there's probably a few bacteria running around doing this, right? It's estimated that we have 5 to 10 times more bacteria in our bodies than our own cells. Okay? There's a lot of them in there doing this work for us. Okay? We depend on them. So now let's imagine that you're at school or you're at work and someone comes in and they're sick. They've got a bacterial infection. Who's going to be exposed to that bacteria in the classroom or in the office? No, who's going to be exposed to the bacteria? Everyone's going to be exposed to that bacteria. Every single person in that room is going to be exposed to the bacteria. Why doesn't everyone get sick? If bacteria caused the disease, wouldn't everyone exposed to it get sick? But they don't. If you've got a classroom of 30 people or 20 people in an office, maybe 1 or 2 people wind up getting sick. Maybe nobody does. Well, how's that possible? Because the bacteria don't cause the disease. Now, just in the same way the garbage truck didn't stop at my house when I didn't have garbage, if there's no garbage in your body that bacteria wants to feed on, what does it do? It doesn't make a home in your body. It goes to somebody else. And you have no symptoms. You don't get sick. Sometimes people will say to me, I had this happen, the other thing, this was going on. I'm not sure if I was sick or if this was a healing crisis. My response is, getting sick is always a healing crisis. Every time there's symptoms, the body's cleansing or healing. That's what's going on. So all those of us who don't get sick, because when we're exposed to these things, it's because we didn't have that garbage in the body. All right? So you want to be really, really clear about this. The bacteria, the pathogen, does not cause the condition. The condition is caused by the circumstances of the terrain of the body. Even Louis Pasteur, who invented pasteurization, a way to kill bacteria in milk and other things, finally said on his deathbed, it was the terrain. It's not the bug, it's the terrain. Okay? So these things don't cause disease. Disease is caused by the condition of the system. If we get the body clean and we allow our immune system to be as strong as possible, then these things provide no threat to us. They provide no threat to us at all. I think I shared with this group a couple weeks ago that I told my little brother, probably 15 or 20 years ago, I would be willing to be injected with live HIV to demonstrate that the pathogen's not going to hurt me if my immune system's in good shape. In case you haven't heard me talk about this, I changed my mind. Not because I'm afraid of the pathogen, but because I don't want to carry it and give it to somebody else. Okay? It's been now 27 plus years, nearly 28 years since I've been sick. Had a cold or a flu or anything. There's no reason anybody can't accomplish exactly the same thing. How do you do that? You get your body clean. You meet all of its needs as well as possible. Sometimes I do better than others. I'm a little behind on sleep, trying to catch up on things I've promised to get done. But if we get enough sleep, we get enough fresh air, sunlight, optimal diet, and we let the body cleanse whenever it needs to, we get enough exercise and enough rest and sleep, we're going to have an immune system that's functioning as well as possible. We're not going to have the garbage in the body that these pathogens want. And so they're not going to have any interest in us. Does this make sense to you guys? Yeah. What's the relationship between the immune system and the pathogens? Yeah, it's a good question, and it may not be one I can really do justice in terms of answering, but your immune system is designed to protect you from anything that might be a threat. We see infections, we see things going on. We had plagues back in the 18th century, 19th century. You saw the bubonic plague, the black plague, you had scarlet fever. You had a number of these diseases which affected a lot of people. The bubonic plague killed, I forget now the numbers, but it was a lot of people all over the world. And so I guess what the immune system is doing with regard to those things, these things come in and they create serious problems for the body because the body's not capable of dealing with it or managing it. But it is the condition, even then. It wasn't the pathogen. So let's look at this, because this is a piece that probably deserves its own separate video, but medicine says it's responsible for eliminating those sicknesses. The records, though, show differently. The statistics show that in virtually every single case, those diseases were already declining at the eventual rate at which they declined down to virtually zero before the vaccines were invented. So the vaccines actually had nothing to do with eradicating the conditions. Why did all those conditions wind up disappearing some whatever it was, 100 some years ago plus? Hygiene. It was hygiene, not natural hygiene, not this. But what happened was three primary things changed, okay? Closed sewage systems in cities. So people who live out in the country, may even today, may not have closed sewage systems. But it's much less of a problem where you've got people living relatively sparsely and they know where not to go. Okay? But in cities where what used to happen in the 1800s was sewage would dump on the streets, would dump into the waterways, and people were coming in contact with it all the time, with human waste. Garbage collection. We're talking about garbage collection. Garbage collection didn't exist back then. Okay, so garbage was everywhere. And that created problems. And zoning started to come into being in cities. Well, how did that make a difference? Well, what used to happen, for instance, let's look at industry. You've got factories. And factories back then paid their workers so little money, they couldn't afford to live anywhere. So what do? They housed their workers in the factory. So people were living in these very toxic industrial settings. They had no clean air. They often didn't have clean water. Those three things all began to shift over the course of 40 or 50 years, and the diseases disappeared because hygiene was much better. People weren't exposed to these conditions. Okay, when that happened, even if they came in contact with the pathogen, it wasn't so much of an issue because their immune systems weren't so weak. Okay? So even back then, when so many people perished as a result of these diseases, not everyone perished. Not everyone exposed to pathogen got sick and died as a result. How come some people survived? Some people's bodies were healthy enough that they were able to. So, I have to, it's uncomfortable to admit that it's a little bit more complex than I'm making it out to be because I'm only telling you as much as I understand. Obviously, there's a little bit more going on, right?
Because what I'm trying to understand is if bacteria is always around us and always in our body, and it doesn't make a home in our body unless we're full of shit in a way. How does what's then the role of the immune system? Is it to kill the pathogens, which wouldn't do any harm if we were clean?
Yeah.
Or is it to just kill other things which are more harmful? Or
Well, yeah, it's to protect us from things that don't belong in the body. So, it's important to the question was, what's the role of the immune system? And again, what it does, and it's the body knows what belongs and what doesn't belong. So, even let's say we're only talking about bacteria. Not all bacteria are created equal. Okay, different strains of bacteria are looking for different things. So while your body is mostly is maybe as much as 90% bacteria, that doesn't mean every bacteria out there is welcome or wouldn't potentially create issues. So your body knows which ones don't belong, which ones have no benefit of being there, and it just extinguishes them, gets rid of them.
and maybe in people who are very prone to getting very sick, maybe the
Well, perhaps that's an interesting idea. Maybe people who are more prone to certain things, the immune system is trying to find a way to exist, to coexist with them, not necessarily at the highest level of health, but in a way that it can continue to function. Perhaps. And there's more that we haven't talked about. There may be much more than I understand, and maybe than anyone understands. But, for instance, some of you have had high temperatures over the last nearly 3 weeks that you've been here for much of that time. Why is that going on? Well, that's your body, and I think you could reasonably say that's part of your immune function. Your body doing this on purpose. Okay? You know, again, leukocytes are part of the immune system. These are white blood cells that your body creates for particular reasons to do particular tasks, to help clean up the system. And this is all part of your immune function. So it's eliminating stuff that doesn't belong. It's, you know, again, it's hard to talk about it because it's not like your circulatory system. It's not a physical thing that we can say, well, there it is. Let's now study it and see what it does. The immune system is a term that describes a whole bunch of different things that are going on in the body to protect the body from things that might be harmful to it. Okay? And so there may actually be much more going on than we're even aware of at this point. I mean, understand that, you know, what we know about the body today, it's vastly more than was known 100 years or 150 years ago. But it's probably still just the tip of the iceberg in terms of what's going on. That's my guess. Okay? Any other questions about that? Again, this, you know, I think this is clearly, this is a basic understanding, but it's important to understand that again, you know, this thing with the garbage men, we don't really have to be so afraid of the pathogens. Now, look at the average person. So the average person hopes that the flu vaccine every year is going to protect them from getting sick during flu season. Okay? This is viral, not bacterial, but it's the same idea. Now, people are hoping that the vaccine is going to prevent them from getting sick. Now, it's becoming increasingly clear that some people get sick as a result of the vaccines. And often with children, there are serious problems. But more to the point, we could try to take this clearly toxic substance into our body to attempt to kill a pathogen. Knowing, I mean, I think, you know, why this is necessary or seems necessary is because so many people are walking around with systems that don't work very well, that aren't capable of doing what they need to do themselves because they're so toxic and so wiped out. So we could take a vaccine and hope and pray it does the job, or we could simply create immunity by making the body as healthy and strong as possible. I'll bet on my body before I bet on the pharmaceutical company's solution every single time. Every time. Now, eventually, I mean, it's possible that at some point in time, I'm going to bet on my body. There's an issue. I'm going to fast. If that doesn't work, and I've said this before, but to be absolutely clear, right, if I've got a bacterial infection that I believe may kill me because my body's not doing what it needs to do, I would take an antibiotic. If I thought I might die without one, I would take one. I don't expect that to happen. I haven't taken any medications now in 28 years, and I don't expect to take them again. But it could happen. You know, again, I mean, I think it's important to point out that there are times where medicine might come in handy. It's virtually always in trauma. You know, it's when the body, we're talking about accidents, we're talking about, or we're talking about in the disease process where we haven't done what we've needed to do. We haven't kept the body clean and healthy, and now we've got something that's advanced to a stage where maybe the body can't handle it. So sometimes it may be too late, and medicine may be all there is. But, my whole reason for being is to help show people that we don't need to wait until then, that we can create amazingly well-functioning systems that simply aren't going to be affected by the stuff that affects most people. That's what's possible.